We had decided from the start that we wanted to go for a totally visually impaired cast. That was going to be the unique selling point of this production, and it wasn't just because we wanted a gimmick. It was because there is an underrepresentation of visually impaired actors out there, and we wanted to offer opportunities for employment and training, etc. That's the raison d'etre of Extant, and that's what we wanted to live up to.
So we advertised and held first round of auditions.
We put an advert out in the Stage and various other industry press, and we said we wanted to audition actors who were visually impaired between the ages of 18 and 30, and we got all sorts of people applying, people who wore contact lenses and glasses, and it got pretty awkward at some points about having to sort of say, well, actually, you're not really visually impaired, and then we had to sort of redefine what we meant by visual impairment and decided that it was really having some kind of visual impairment that wasn't corrected by a visual aid. And we got to the point where we'd cast, I think it was 4 or 5 of the actors.
I knew Fate had a blind store for me when I was 7. I remember standing in my grandparents' garden in Javille.
Fate had a blowing store for me when I was 7.
But I witnessed through tears of farewell the 2 great box trees, grape arbour, light. Until then, it had cast a spell over me.
But not like water, for its source was everywhere.
So we held another round of auditions and spread the net further. And we did secure our cast, but it was very, very important they were blind and visually impaired. Certainly that the lead, Jacques, was. And it was very hard to find him.
I knew Fate had a blind store for me when I was 7. I remember standing alone in my grandparents' garden in Javille. And I know I've seen the garden for the last time.
I was standing alone in my grandparents' garden in Javille.
The 2 great box trees, great arbour, and sunlight on the paths.
I was standing. I'm not this man. I knew that Fate.
But we were still missing one, and Eileen had this really good idea because we had got stuck. We had absolutely nowhere else that we could try in order to get any more people to audition for us. Then Eileen had this brainwave because we were having such difficulty in where we were going to source any more visually impaired actors, and she thought what we could do was to split the role of Jacques Luceron to be played by 2 actors. An older actor who would play Jacques in his later years when he was writing his autobiography, reflecting back over his life, and the younger Jacques to play in flashback the actual periods of action and when he was in the thick of it, when he was a young man. And we had an older actor, definitely, who we knew could play that part and who was blind. We just then needed to find somebody who was young. And really it was, when you come to think about it, a really tall order. And we had to split that role in order to try and make it work for ourselves, because where on earth were we going to get an actor who was, who looked 17, who was competent at being able to deliver text, was able to act and convey, deep emotion, and that being quite an intellectual character. We were wanting to have it was going to be a physical theatre piece, so this person was also going to have to be very physically agile, preferably thin, because he was being starved by the Germans during the Second World War, and blind. I mean, it was nigh on impossible. So they did what we had to do under the circumstances, and that was to cast somebody who had quite little experience, really, actually virtually none, and we spent quite a lot of time training that person to get to the point of being able to deliver a passable performance.
For me when I was 7. I was standing alone in my grandparents' garden in Sheffield, and I knew that I was looking at the garden for the last time.
They were supported very much by the rest of the cast around them and by an older Jacques who was a very, very good blind professional and competent actor.
From a production management point of view, that had huge budgetary implications because obviously you set the budgets a long time before you actually go on the road. So you're sitting at your desk making decisions about how many nights you're going to be away for, how many days you're going to need to pay the actors per diems, their food and allowance. You're making decisions about how much money you're going to put for the set to be built, to be made, the costumes and lighting. And you've no idea at this point, bar a script, what the production's going to entail. You don't even have any design ideas when I planned this budget. So whilst I allowed for a lot of contingencies, I hadn't allowed for employing a 6th actor. So that put a huge strain on the budget.
Some of the problems we encountered had less to do with visual impairment itself and more to do with the fact that visually impaired actors historically have had less access to training, and therefore some of the actors that we took on were very inexperienced, and that caused difficult group dynamics at times between experienced actors and less experienced actors.